being decided on. That's very sad. But let's go on to the next thing, which I wanted to talk about a little bit. And I will get to Jennifer L. Lawrence and We Build the Wall. She's not our guest today, but we do want to reference that we had spoken to them and talk a little bit about that very shortly. But as we always do, we want to talk about shame. The Game of Thrones Shame Award for the show goes to Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller, the now former U.S. Special Counsel, who did the ever infamous Mueller report, which we were told was the answer. It was the answer the Democrats were looking for to prove that President Trump needs to be impeached. No crimes were found. There is nothing alleged. That's just not the case. So where are we with this? Because everyone's talking about it now. Because yesterday, Robert Mueller came out and said, hey, guess what? There's nothing new to be said here. The report is the report. And so where are we going to go? That's it. There's no way to prove it. But what he went on to say is that the result, and this is it, Hillary Clinton, under Comey, we found that Hillary Clinton is guilty but shouldn't be charged, and that Mueller says Trump is not guilty, but he should be charged. That's what was the result of yesterday's conversation, and it's insulting. And we see an article here, which was in the National Review, and it says, not exonerated is not a standard any free country should accept. And I agree with that. Came out yesterday by Charles Koch on May 29th. You can look it up on the National Review yourself. And he's right. Let's think about this. The fact is, there is no reason why we should be having this conversation. Robert Mueller should not be talking about whether or not the president's exonerated. That's not important. Lest we all forget, you are innocent until found guilty. If there is a charge, then that charge should be placed against you. You go to courts and you decide whether and you are found either innocent or guilty. It is not supposed to be like what we're seeing here with accusation equaling guilt. And that, nor should we hear from our teams, our judicial department, that we have a suspect who is guilty and is not being charged, or on the other side, that we have a suspect that is not guilty and should be charged. That is not the job of any of these individuals. I recently tweeted to Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who took the position that because President Trump was not exonerated of not having a charge against him, that this somehow makes him guilty. Quite honestly, that's not how it works. And she forgets, it's on Congress now. No, it's not. Congress is legislative. They create laws. They don't prosecute laws. That's the judiciary. Congress does not get to enforce laws. That's the executive branch. Congress creates laws. If they think the laws are incorrect, then they should do that. Now, they have some oversight, absolutely, but they don't need to expand their role into prosecution or into enforcement of laws. That's not what they are there for. And to have a witch hunt where we are going through as a nation, 4, 5 investigations now, tens of millions of dollars, searching for a problem to justify why we're searching for the problem. That's wrong. And this is a domino effect. And we see this in a lot of other things as well. It's not just something we're seeing. Accusation equals guilt. We saw this with the Kavanaugh. We saw this with the Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh, when he was going through his appointment. We saw in there accusations equal guilt, and somehow that was supposed to stop someone. That's not the way our system is supposed to work. That is wrong. That is just very wrong. because it denies people their rights. And we see this in a lot of things, because not only was it affecting the Supreme Court pick, but now we're seeing that affect the regular people. If you go to KDRV.com, that's the news channel 12 ABC out in California, we see that laws like the red flag law that was put out there, and I've talked a lot about this, that law, which assumes that you are guilty of a non-crime and you should be punished. And in California, they're expanding that law. That's according, and this was on May 21st, that it was out there, and not a lot of people have talked about this, but California is taking the same steps that New York State has taken on the red flag legislation, expanding the number of people to allow employers to be able to charge their workers with a non-crime and say, okay, you own a gun and you may be dangerous, so we should take away your Second Amendment rights, which could also take away your family, take away your children. What is this? Where are we going? And I spoke about this in one of many articles that I wrote about this over at the Voss Political Commentary, and you can check this out for yourself. In particular, I'm pointing out the Voss Political Commentary article, which was written on, this one was on December 4th of 2018, the red flag to your rights awaiting the next crisis. And we see this over and over and over again, that every time there is a crisis, someone comes to take your rights. And that's because and I quote myself here, politics is a game of chess, with pieces being placed well in advance. Given the right crisis, with enough eyeballs provided by major news media, people with a proper mindset by social media, and that game shifts to a speed chess match. So let's apply that. Let's think about that. In the same way that the red flag laws are being manipulated to emotionally affect people and cause them to move forward, we're seeing the same thing with the Mueller report. It's the same thing we saw with Justice Kavanaugh and the hearings in the Senate. We're having media put this emotional baggage, this emotional impetus on people that, well, they must be guilty. They must be guilty. We heard this with Me Too as well. You must be guilty because you have been accused. And yet, you never get due process. There is no day in court. There is no opportunity to prove yourself innocent because no crime has been committed. And again, this goes back to what we're hearing about Robert Mueller. The president is not exonerated. He doesn't have to be exonerated. There is no crime. There is no charge. He is innocent. You don't need to be exonerated to be innocent. By definition, if you are innocent, you are exonerated. There is nothing to charge you with. There is no guilt to question. And we see the same thing with the red flag laws. You're being punished for a non-crime. You've done nothing wrong, and therefore you are innocent. There is nothing to exonerate your name from. There is nothing to go to court about. You haven't done anything, and yet you're being punished. This is the problem that we have right now. Accusation equals guilt. Due process is relegated to someone else's feelings. The feelings that the news media have about a situation, the feelings that political elites have about a situation, how some fraction, some fringe political organization like Citizen Action or Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, otherwise known as PLOT, or Indivisible New York, groups and organizations that are fringe groups that scream at their top of their lungs that someone should be guilty because they feel like someone is guilty, and that's the problem. That's not guilt. That's not breaking a law. I've had this conversation with a lot of people. If you can show that there was a law that was broken, then I can understand trying to go for impeachment. I can understand having the argument. But this isn't like Bill Clinton. There is no is here. There is no definition of is that's in dispute. There is no crime. There is no collusion. And therefore, the president is innocent. You don't need to say that he's not exonerated. Because in saying he's not exonerated, you assume that there must be some guilt that exists, even though no proof of it has been found. In 5 investigations, over 2.5 years, tens of millions of dollars being spent, there is no evidence. Same thing with the red flag. There is no evidence. Someone feels like you could be dangerous. There is no evidence. And yet you are punished. We are going down a dangerous path where due process is no longer the rule of the nation, and that is a problem for everyone. Not just progressives, not just for the right, not for the left, whether you're a libertarian, a conservative, a Democrat, a Republican, it doesn't matter. If there is no due process, and the standard is whether or not someone feels like you are doing something wrong, and therefore you can be punished for that without having a trial or your day in court, especially if you don't get your chance to defend yourself, then the system has failed you and the system is broken. It has not become irrevocably broken yet, but it is well on its way. And we should be aware of that, and we should be afraid of that. And moments like what Robert Mueller is doing and how his report is being used is leading us down that path, that dangerous path, where accusation equals guilt, due process is not necessary, and you are punished without cause. That is the problem for the nation. But let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back, and then we'll talk a little bit more.